Episode 7. Grounded. There are some words that sound harmless until they happen to you. Benign, stable, negative, discharged, grounded. I'd never thought much about the last one. Pilots did. Flight crews did. Trauma surgeons, not so much. Until the morning Rowan stopped flying. It started with paperwork. It usually does. I was halfway through dictating an operative report when I heard raised voices drifting from the administrative offices. Not shouting. The controlled kind of argument that only happens when everyone involved is trying very hard to remain professional. Curiosity got the better of me. I stepped into the hallway. Rowan stood outside the office of the medical director, still wearing her flight suit. She wasn't saying anything. She didn't need to. The expression on her face told me enough. Defeat. I'd never seen it on her before. She walked past me without noticing I was there. Her shoulders were rigid, her jaw clenched. The office door remained open behind her. Inside, Dr. Patel sighed and rubbed a hand across his forehead. When he noticed me standing there, he gave me a tired smile. "You heard." "I heard enough." He nodded. "We've grounded Hayes." The words landed harder than I expected. "For how long?" "Until she's medically cleared." My stomach tightened. What happened? Dr. Patel looked at the paperwork scattered across his desk. "She failed her annual physical." I frowned. "Shoulder." He nodded. "The MRI was worse than anyone expected." My mind immediately replayed every moment I'd noticed her wince. Every time she'd reached for her right arm. Every smile she'd used to hide the pain. She knew. He looked at me. She knew. How long? We're not entirely sure. He paused. But long enough. I found Rowan sitting alone on the rooftop helipad. The helicopter wasn't there. It had already left with another crew. The empty landing pad somehow made the silence feel louder. She didn't turn around when I approached. "I wondered how long it'd take you." "You lied to me." Her shoulders rose and fell. "I omitted details. You told me it wasn't that bad." "It wasn't." I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because I couldn't quite believe what I was hearing. "It isn't that bad?" "They're being cautious. They're grounding you. Temporarily. They're recommending surgery." She stayed quiet. I already knew what that meant. "You said no?" She finally looked at me. "I haven't decided." "You already decided." Her silence confirmed it. I folded my arms. "Why?" "You know why." "No. I need to fly." "You need both shoulders." "I've managed. For 7 years." "I have. By hiding the pain." She stood. I wasn't hiding. I stared at her. "You've been taking anti-inflammatory medication before shifts." Her expression changed. "Just enough." "I've seen the bottle." "You went through my bag?" "It fell out." She looked away. "I wasn't trying to deceive anyone." "No? No. So what exactly were you doing?" "I was working. On an injured shoulder. On a shoulder that still works. For now. It always has." I felt my patience slipping. "And what happens when it doesn't?" "It won't." "You don't know that." "I know my body. I'm a trauma surgeon. And I'm the one living in it." Neither of us spoke. The wind swept across the empty helipad. Somewhere below us, an ambulance siren echoed through the city. "They told me," I said quietly, "that if you keep flying, one bad landing could destroy your shoulder completely." She didn't answer. "They're worried you'll lose the use of your arm." Still nothing. I stepped closer. "What if next time it's not pain?" She met my eyes. "What if next time you can't pull someone out of a wreck? What if someone dies because I wasn't there?" The words stopped me. She continued before I could answer. "What if the crew replacing me misses something? They're trained. So am I. What if a child doesn't make it because I decided to stay home and recover? Rowan, what if?" I opened my mouth, closed it again, because there wasn't an answer. Only possibilities. She took a slow breath. "You know what I see every time I close my eyes?" I shook my head. "People waiting." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Waiting for the helicopter." She looked toward the skyline. "Waiting for us." "I can't just stop." "You can." "I don't know how." I reached for her hand. She let me. "I need you alive more than those strangers need you in the air." She smiled sadly. "You don't believe that." "I do." "No." She squeezed my hand gently. "You believe everyone deserves to be saved. So do you." "I do." Another silence settled between us. "I kissed you," she said quietly. "I know. I shouldn't have." I stared at her. "Don't. It wasn't fair." "Why?" "Because now." She looked away. "Now leaving would hurt someone besides me." I took another step closer. "So stay." "I can't." "You can have the surgery." "I can't." "Why?" "Because if I stop flying." Her voice cracked for the first time. "I don't know who I am anymore." The words broke something inside me. Not because I didn't understand. Because I did. Too well. I knew exactly what it meant to build your entire identity around saving lives. Exactly what it meant to wonder who you'd be without the operating room. But love doesn't always make understanding easier. Sometimes, it makes it unbearable. If you get back into that helicopter before you're cleared, I swallowed hard. You're making a mistake. She looked at me for a very long time. Then she nodded. I know. And if you refuse surgery? I know. You could lose everything. A tiny smile appeared. So could you. What does that mean? It means one day you'll choose surgery over sleep. She stepped back. Then surgery over dinner. Another step. Then surgery over family. Her eyes found mine again. And one morning you'll wake up and realize the hospital is the only place you know how to exist. The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Because some part of me feared she was right. I don't want that for you. I don't want this for you. For one impossible moment, I thought one of us would give in. Instead, her radio crackled from her belt. Not a dispatch, just another crew checking in. She unclipped it, looked at it, then slowly turned it off. I should go. Rowan. She hesitated. I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she simply shook her head. I need some time. Then she walked away. She didn't look back. She didn't say goodbye. I stood alone on the empty helipad long after she'd disappeared down the stairwell. Above me, the sky was perfectly clear. For the first time since I'd met Rowan Hayes, there wasn't a helicopter coming. And somehow, the silence was louder than the blades had ever been. Episode 8. The one I couldn't save. There are some questions you don't ask the people you love. Not because you aren't curious. Because you already know the answer will hurt. After Rowan walked away from me, the hospital felt different. The helicopters still landed, patients still arrived, trauma bays still filled with blood, alarms and impossible decisions. But something was missing. Every time I looked toward the helipad, I expected to see her. Instead, someone else stepped out. Another flight medic, another crew, another stranger. I hadn't realized how much space Rowan occupied until she wasn't there anymore. 3 days passed before anyone said her name. I was dictating notes after a splenectomy when Dr. Marcus Reynolds stepped into my office. He'd been a trauma surgeon longer than I'd been alive. The kind of doctor who spoke softly enough that everyone automatically listened. You look tired. I am. He studied me for a moment. This isn't about work. I smiled weakly. I'm not that transparent. You'd be surprised. He sat across from me. Haven't seen Hayes around. The words caught me off guard. Neither have I. He nodded slowly. I figured. You know her? I knew her. He leaned back in his chair. Different uniform. It took me a second to understand. The military? He nodded. Medevac. Something inside me shifted. Rowan had mentioned a helicopter crash. Never the military. She was good. He smiled to himself. Best medic I'd ever worked with. Were you stationed together? For a while, silence settled between us. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he said, she never forgave herself. I frowned. For what? His smile disappeared. I suppose she never told you. I shook my head. He looked toward the window. I don't know if it's my story to tell. It isn't. The words surprised even me. But, I couldn't finish the sentence. He nodded. I understand. He stood to leave. His hand paused on the door. There was a rescue. His voice had grown quieter. 2 children. Then he walked away. He never said another word. He didn't need to. For the rest of the shift, I couldn't stop thinking about 2 children. That night, after everyone else had gone home, I found myself standing in the hospital archives. Not looking for Rowan, looking for history. Old newspaper clippings lined one wall of the hospital library. Major disasters, medical breakthroughs, local heroes. Halfway down the shelf, I saw her. The photograph was nearly 10 years old. Rowan looked younger, shorter hair, the same steady eyes. She was climbing out of a military helicopter carrying a little boy wrapped in a thermal blanket. The headline read, "Local soldier honored after mountain rescue." The article wasn't long. A helicopter had been dispatched after an earthquake destroyed part of a mountain village overseas. 2 children had been trapped beneath the same collapsed building. The structure became unstable during the rescue. The flight crew had enough time to reach one child. Not both. Rowan chose the younger one. By the time another crew arrived, the older child was gone. I read the paragraph 3 times. Then a 4th. My chest tightened, not because I'd learned what happened. Because I suddenly understood everything. The way Rowan looked at children. The way she never left a scene until the last patient was found. Why every life mattered so desperately to her. Why she couldn't stop flying. She wasn't chasing adrenaline. She wasn't proving anything. She was trying, every single day, to save the child she never got back. No wonder she couldn't walk away. She'd been trying to walk back toward that mountain for 7 years. It was almost midnight when I found myself standing outside her apartment building. I hadn't called. I hadn't texted. I wasn't even sure she'd answer. The door opened before I could knock a second time. She looked surprised, then worried. Liv? Neither of us spoke. I simply looked at her. Really looked. At the woman who carried strangers through burning cars. Who smiled at frightened patients. Who climbed into helicopters despite being terrified. Who blamed herself for something no human being should ever have to choose. I know. Her face changed, just slightly. Marcus told you. No. I shook my head. He respected you too much. She closed her eyes. The article. I nodded. Silence. I should explain. You don't have to. I chose. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I chose one child over another. You chose the one you could reach. I left one behind. You saved one. I left one behind. The words broke on the way out. For the first time, I saw Rowan Hayes cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just one tear she seemed too exhausted to stop. I stepped forward, not to fix her, not to argue, not to tell her she wasn't responsible. None of those things would matter. Instead, I wrapped my arms around her. She froze. For one heartbeat, two. Then, slowly, she held onto me. Tightly, like she'd been carrying the weight of that mountain alone for years. We stood in the doorway without saying another word. Sometimes, love isn't finding the right thing to say. Sometimes, it's choosing not to let go. Episode 9. Home. People spend their whole lives searching for home. Some find it in a city. Some find it in a house. Some find it in another person. The strange thing is, you usually don't realize you found it until you're afraid of losing it. After the night at Rowan's apartment, nothing between us was dramatically different. And yet, everything was. She still brought patients through the trauma bay. I still operated on them. She still disappeared before finishing her coffee. I still watched helicopters leave the rooftop. But now, sometimes she'd text. Coffee? Or, alive? Usually after one of my overnight shifts. My replies weren't much better. Barely. Or, you owe me pancakes. She always answered with the same thing. I know. 3 weeks passed before either of us had an entire evening free. It felt almost suspicious. You do realize, Jamie said as I finished changing out of my scrubs, that normal people have hobbies. I have hobbies. Name one. I thought about it. Sleeping? She laughed. That's not a hobby. It is if you're a surgeon. What are you doing tonight? I smiled before I could stop myself. Dinner. Her grin appeared immediately. With helicopter girl? I really wish you'd stop calling her that. So that's a yes. I rolled my eyes. Yes. Jamie leaned back in her chair. About time. Rowan's apartment was exactly what I expected. Neat, practical, quiet, except for one thing. Plants. There were plants everywhere. On the windowsill, on bookshelves, hanging beside the kitchen window. I looked around in confusion. I wasn't expecting this. Rowan glanced up from the cutting board. The plants? You fly helicopters. I do. You own whatever this is. She laughed. A monstera. I thought monsteras were monsters. They're only dramatic. So they're surgeons. She pointed the wooden spoon at me. I was going to say flight medics. Agree to disagree. She shook her head, smiling. Dinner turned out to be significantly better than either of us expected. Mostly because Rowan admitted she couldn't cook. I thought you said you knew what you were doing. I said I was optimistic. That's not the same thing. It is if you're hungry. An hour later, smoke drifted lazily from the frying pan. We stared at it. I think it's done. I think it's dead. She burst into laughter. Real laughter. The kind I'd only heard once before. So, I reached for my phone. Pizza? She sighed dramatically. Please never tell anyone I burned pasta. I wasn't aware that was possible. Neither was I. The pizza arrived 30 minutes later. We ate it sitting cross-legged on the living room floor because Rowan didn't own a dining table. You seriously don't have a table? I've been meaning to buy one. For how long? She considered it. 2 years. I looked at her. You've lived here for 2 years. I have chairs. 1 chair. It counts. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my slice of pizza. She smiled. I like making you laugh. The room grew quiet again. Not uncomfortable, just peaceful. You know. I looked at her. I haven't laughed like this in a long time. She looked down at the pizza box. Me neither. After dinner, Music drifted softly from an old speaker sitting on the bookshelf. Something slow, something neither of us recognized. Rowan carried our empty plates into the kitchen. When she came back, she held out one hand. I looked at it. What? Dance with me? I laughed. In your living room? Unless you'd prefer the hallway. I don't dance. Neither do I. Then why are we doing this? She smiled. Because nobody's watching. I placed my hand in hers. She pulled me gently to my feet. Neither of us was particularly graceful. We stepped on each other's shoes. Turned the wrong direction. Nearly collided with the couch. At one point I started laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. You call this dancing? I call it surviving. I think we're losing. Probably. She rested her forehead lightly against mine. I've had worse partners. Oh? There was a firefighter once. I already don't like this story. He had absolutely no rhythm. I'm relieved. You shouldn't be. Why? You're only slightly better. I pretended to look offended. That's incredibly rude. It's also true. She smiled. I kissed her. Not because the moment demanded it. Because it felt easy. She smiled against my lips. You know what? I've been wanting to do that all evening. You could've. I was enjoying the anticipation. We ended up sitting on the couch with mugs of tea neither of us really wanted. The television played quietly in the background. Neither of us was watching it. Do you ever think about stopping? I asked it gently. She knew what I meant. Flying. She looked toward the window. Sometimes. And? I always picture myself somewhere else. She smiled. It lasts about 5 minutes. What happens after that? I wonder who needs us. I nodded. I figured. She looked at me. But, I've been thinking. I waited. If I ever do stop. She reached for my hand. I'd like it to be because I found something worth coming home to. The words settled quietly between us. I squeezed her hand. You already have. She looked at me for a long time. Then smiled. I think you're right. Her phone rang. The sound shattered the silence. She frowned. Nobody from air rescue called this late unless it mattered. She answered immediately. Hayes. She listened. The color drained from her face. I'm on my way. She stood before the call had even ended. What happened? She was already reaching for her jacket. Passenger train. She grabbed her flight helmet from the counter. Multiple cars off the tracks. She looked at me. There was no fear in her eyes. Only purpose. I have to go. I nodded. I know. She stepped toward the door. Then turned back. For just a second, she kissed my forehead. I'll see you later. I smiled. I'll be here. She left. A minute later, I heard it. The familiar rhythm of helicopter blades rising into the night. I walked to the window and watched the aircraft disappear into the darkness. For reasons I couldn't explain, I didn't go back inside. I stood there, watching the empty sky long after the helicopter was gone. As though some part of me already knew that not every journey ends the way it begins.